Well, we had at the beginning, when we decided that we would refuse to acquiesce to these strips. Um, there's a there was a format set in place by the administration, and what you have is basically a half a dozen goons dressed in full riot regalia, um, with their riot shields and their helmets, and they're kitted up like, like robo type cops, And what you had was a prisoner vulnerable to the extent that he's standing there with nothing but himself, being faced with this. So these people coming in and coming at you. I mean, flying at you like with their riot shields, etc. And beating the fuck clean out of you. There was no other way to describe it. They just beat you. They beat you down to the ground. They stripped your clothes off. They cut them off. And I recall my first one. And what they done to me, which sort of struck a chord with me, given the blanket no wash protest, the hunger strike era, the issue of the 5 demands, the issue of clothing, which was one of the key demands and stuff like that in relation to the hunger strike. And what happened was after they cut the clothes off me, they went deliberately and got the prison jumper, and they came and they thrust it onto me, and while doing so, they were sniggering, they were laughing, because they knew the significance of it and what it meant to Republicans about wearing the gear, as they used to call it. So it's not just about the condition. It's not just about this. It's not about not getting out to the yard. It's not about the lack of education. It's broader. It relates back to the era. And for anybody to say that it doesn't relate back to the era of the blanket no wash, the hunger strike era, the criminalisation strategy, policies that they had, it does, let me assure you, firsthand, it does. And in the mindsets of these people, it does. They're trying to break you. The use of a jumper to force onto a Republican was very symbolic to me in relation to what they were trying to do because of what took place, years ago. And you can't divorce what's happening now from what happened back then. And you see the legacy, the prisoners in there now, like, in my opinion, are, like that legacy that was from years ago. The prisoners in there now inherit that legacy. There's nobody else is entitled to it, in my opinion, bar the people in there who are now resisting it. Thanks for that question. I believe that the solution is quite simple, but I believe that there are major obstacles in the way. I don't believe that it's merely your screws or merely your POA. I think it's above that. I think it's at a political level, and I believe it's part of a very subliminal strategy that's going on in relation to criminalising Republican prisoners in Maghaberry. The solution to end this protest is quite simple. It's quite pragmatic. There's quite a pragmatic way of doing it, without people losing face, without David Ford losing face. He did set up, we have to remember, an independent assessment team who came up with recommendations as to how to end the impasse. Those recommendations have been sitting on David Ford's desk from October. And the recommendations are that there would be the introduction of what they call a term of posture in the reception area. Because we know, because when we negotiated this agreement, we knew that they didn't want it. Some people within the POA, etc., didn't want the agreement. But we negotiated it. They came at us with different proposals, which we refused because they didn't address the issues. Now, these issues here, we fought hard for them. We protested over them. We've got bait and battered over them. We've been forcibly strip searched over them. You know, for people to think for 1 second that in some way by doing that to us that we're going to capitulate in relation to what number one was achieved in relation to the agreement, and that as Republicans in some way we're going to capitulate to that criminalisation strategy, be it the subliminal version of what once was, then they're wrong. Because I have spoke to all the prisoners in there, and regardless of the hardships, you know, that they're going through, they're very determined in relation to the issues and in relation to the protest, etc. And there are, like there has always been within jail, differences in relation to how people tactically move it forward or whatever. You know, that's natural. That's how Republican political people, you know, go about their business. You know, they debate, they talk, they strategize, they move things on. But directly to your question in relation to, is it easy to resolve? Yes, it is. In my book, it's easy to resolve, very easy to resolve without people losing face. Will they resolve it? That's the big debate. You know, are they under enough pressure to resolve it? That's the big debate. I believe that there is an escalation needed by people around this room in relation to escalating it and putting it into people's faces, of and informing people exactly what's taking place, and to be standing against those who try and disassociate the two policies, the once criminalisation policy that we all know about historically, compared to what's taking place now. They cannot be divorced. And I have no problem in confronting anybody, you know, in relation to these issues, because they're one and the same. They are one and the same. And it's up in relation to how do we escalate it. I believe that tactically in relation to escalation, I don't believe that the people in this room should be throwing any more burden on the prisoners in jail. I think it's up to each and every one of us to escalate it in the political context. We, as prisoners while in there, had no problem addressing our issues to everyone. I mean, SDLP, Sinn Féin, anybody else who wanted to see or wanted to talk to us or whatever, we did, you know, from that, and we talked about it, you know, as Republicans, as to whether or not we should, you know, talk to Sinn Féin, because people had differences with them and all the rest of it. And, you know, there was no problem. We made the decision that we would speak to everyone. Now, we have done that. That has been done on numerous occasions. We have met, you know, we have met the Justice Committee, we've met Sinn Féin, we've met the SDLP, we've met church representatives. The product, and this is the litmus test of it all, is, you know, and it always has to be based upon, you know, the product at the end. Has there been anything that has come out of any of these discussions that we can turn around and say, well, there's something, Jesus, here, you know, they're trying, they're here, they're doing this, they're doing that, and they're doing the other, and whatever. The reality of it is the product is zero. There is no product from these people in relation to it. We, you know, we can surmise and we can do this and do that and whatever, and, you know, strategically people are always at work in a political field, and, you know, what strategic sort of aims that they have and all the rest of it, you know, because it could quite well be argued, for example, that it suits, you know, parties, you know, like Sinn Féin to be portraying Republican prisoners in jail as criminals. You know, and that you know, from the wider sort of Republican base aspect of things, you know, and there is an argument for that, you know, whether people fundamentally believe that it's true or not, you know, because some people would have the opposite view of, you know, well, these people have been through it before, they understand it, they would never go against the fundamentals of that type of stuff, and, you know, allowing that type of stuff to take place, people getting bait, you know. Like, we have to realise that Sinn Féin are in the midst of, along with other parties, you know, don't get me wrong, but they were acutely, you know, involved in all of that criminalisation stuff, the no wise, the hunger strike, or the whole lot. Yet there's no product coming out, you know. Is it a case whereby Sinn Féin are ever going to face David Ford down and go, you can't do that to these people? That's the line that we won't cross. We won't, for example, put forward David Ford as a Minister for Justice because of what you are doing to prisoners in there. Are they going to cross that? Are they going to draw that line? In my opinion, there's not a sweat of them drawing that line in relation to their own project. Now, that's a matter for them, you know, and you know, far be it from me to tell them what to do. But if they're embarking upon strategies like that, then we should be putting it up to them. I'm not talking about in a physical sense, but I'm talking about in a rational argument type sense, from a Republican perspective, that they are prepared to sit back and draw no lines and let Republican prisoners get bait day in, day out. You know, these are the questions that we should be putting to people. I'm a Republican political activist, and I don't intend to change. Always have been and always will be.
Okay.